Hello, everybody. In last session, we had identified certain themes in the theory part, that is section A. We identified 8 broad themes. One of them is, or the first theme is, fundamentals or the core of the ethics. That is the fundamentals and the core concepts of ethics as a discipline. Now, this segment is very important, not only from examination point of view, but also, as we discussed in last session, that it forms the background of all other topics. It will give you a strong inclination that you are writing ethics answer. It is not generalized answer, and it is not just GS kind of answer. Now, in this segment, if we analyze the question, you will find that competency level of these questions is moderate to difficult. Some of the questions are really difficult. One of them today I would be taking. Now, this portion demands not only basic understanding of the ethics as a discipline, but also interlinkages. And once you understand both of these, then you see that you will be efficient in the application part. Superficial treatment and just hitting left and right won't fetch you marks. That will give you just like 3.5, but that will not serve your purpose. To get into the zone of 5.5 and 6 marks, that is 55% of marking, then you have to get deeper into the subject. The best way to master this section or the entire syllabus is to have big picture formation of the subject. Means you need to see the ethics syllabus as a whole, and all other themes should be interlinked. I mean, that should you have a clear-cut visualization. In this regard, I have uploaded 2 videos around 2 hours each, and third video would be uploaded soon. And I believe that these 3 videos will give you a very good big picture formation, and that will help you in understanding of ethics as a discipline. In the third video, which would be uploaded soon, you will find that I have restructured or reframed the entire syllabus. Means the kind of syllabus which you have got from UPSC, if you prepare that syllabus in that way, in that sequence, then that will give you a mechanical approach. But if we slightly change according to the basic demand and the ultimate objective of this paper and ethics, then the entire reorientation occurs, restructuring of the syllabus topic occurs, and I believe that will give you a very good understanding and depth of the syllabus. Now, in this core part of theme 1, that is fundamentals of the ethics, there is one question. Differentiate moral intuition from moral reasoning with suitable examples. Now see, this is conceptual question, and I would frame it as a difficult question. And you also need to realize that this is not just definition and terminology based question. You need to know what exactly they are, what is the difference which question is asking, what is the relation between moral intuition and moral reasoning, what role they play in the overall scheme of things or ethical decision making process. And then we will substantiate with certain examples. Now, to attempt this question, first of all, you need to know about 2 methodologies. See, in philosophy, we teach 2 types of methodology. One is intuitive method, and other is deductive method. Okay. In this, let me clarify one thing. In this PYQ discussion sessions, I'm not just discussing 150 words. I'll make a comprehensive discussion. So don't develop that kind of feel that I mean, how can we write all this stuff? I am discussing threadbare analysis. I am discussing all the possible dimensions so that if question comes on this and related to this, you will be efficiently able to handle that question. Okay. So it will be more like a, class. Okay. So see, we have two methodology, intuitive and deductive method. Let us first try to understand what these two methodologies, and then you will say that how simple this question becomes. Now, first, let us see deductive method. Now, deductive method is something like which you deduce, which you infer based on certain presuppositions, beliefs, hypotheses, assumptions, presumptions. You had some already preconceived uh, belief system or notion. It might be values, it might be ethical approach, it might be philosophical approach, or like if I give a reference of science, then in maths and in the physics, then we have the concept of axiom, that is certain truth. And then based on that axiom, we make certain deductions, derivation. This is what deductive method. On the other hand, inductive method is that which does not take reference from already established any belief or any axiom or any hypothesis. It is like something like spontaneous. It does not have any reference point. It just occurs. उस, उसका कोई reason नहीं है, right? So that is like intuitive. Now, once you understand these two methods, intuitive method and deductive method, then you can clearly point out that intuitive method leads to moral intuition and deductive method leads to moral reasoning. Okay, now see what exactly this means. Now, moral intuition is a spontaneous moral judgment. It is not just a kind of intuition, since it is like talking about moral intuition. So it is a spontaneous moral judgment, which is derived not from any preconceived notion or any belief system. That means spontaneous moral judgment means it independently arises. It is not deduced. It is not inferred. It arises on its own. It is not connected to like instantly or immediately. You might take some time to reach to certain moral judgment. But to reach to that moral judgment, I don't have to consult anybody or any belief system. It just happens. For example, a child is working in a factory or a child is working in some dhaba or restaurant and he is brutally treated. He is exploited. He is beaten very brutally. You see, and then you immediately say, this is wrong. We don't sit down and then analyze about those belief system or those value system, and then we conclude. Something happens in the governance and the corruption, and it is like, government department is ill-treating vulnerable section or marginalized section of the society, and they have been deprived of their benefits, goods and services. You see that, and you immediately say, hey, this is wrong. This is your spontaneous moral judgment. This is moral intuition. You can say that this is the innate sense of right and wrong. It is something like gut feeling. It is something like you can say it is the sixth sense. It is the innate ability. You must have heard of using one phrase, there is something fishy. It is just like you entered into some room and you immediately sensed there is something wrong. There is something fishy. What is that? I don't know. So moral intuition is something that sixth sense. It might be shaped by emotions, by cultural system, by value system, by conventions, by traditions. Its roots could be traced to conscience. Moral intuition is not just conscience, but it is rooted. It can be connected to conscience or you can say inner voice. That's what moral intuition means. That means we say that moral intuition belongs to pre-reflective stage. You don't reflect, you don't reason out, you just reach to the judgment. Then that is known as spontaneous moral judgment. Now, this has its own importance. The first importance is that it acts as a moral compass. It acts as a guide. It tells you that there is something which you need to do and which you need to explore further. Or you can say it becomes a kind of basis for further moral inquiry. You sensed something and you want to get deeper into that. However, such moral intuition have also certain problems, certain challenges. First, it might be biased, it might be subjective, it might be manifestation of your social prejudice, right? At times, it might be impulsive. The second challenge and second problem is that there is no set criteria for moral intuition. It just happens. And since there is not any set criteria, third problem arises that it is not having universal application. Universality is lacking. And fourth problem is that it is rejected as unreliable by some other approaches like utilitarianism. Because of these problems, then to remove these challenges and issues, then we move to moral reasoning. Okay. Just give me 1 minute. Yes. So to remove these problems, we move to moral reasoning. So in a way, you can say moral intuition is an initial stage, and you immediately reach to the later stage, and that is known as moral reasoning. And it is one of the ethical competency. Now, if moral intuition is the spontaneous moral judgment, then moral reasoning is a process of reaching to the judgment through logical reasoning, through analysis, and it is not spontaneous because it is based on certain beliefs, certain values, certain ethical approaches, or some philosophical approaches. You evaluate what you sensed, then you start examining. It is a process of discovering the most ethical and most justifiable ethical decision. Moral reasoning, or also known as moral imagination or ethical reasoning, is like a process of exploring various options and seeing pros and cons, positive and negative of each option, right? And in that way, it helps you to navigate through the dilemmas and to reach to the some ethical judgment. Whereas moral intuition was a kind of innate. However, moral reasoning is acquired. It is learned through practice, through training, through doing various case studies. You understand the process of discovering the most ethical and justifiable decision. If moral intuition was subjective, then moral reasoning obviously becomes more objective. Now, moral intuition is, like you can say, becomes a basis of discretionary power, discretionary decision. Because at times, laws are not clear. At times, laws are not there. And there is a dilemma in front of you. There is some disadvantaged section of society person, some vulnerable person, some marginalized person, some very needy person. And law is not clear. I mean, this is like dilemma you will see in the case studies. Now, to come out of this, you rely on your intuition, moral intuition. Okay. So if moral intuition becomes the basis of your discretionary parts, then you can say moral reasoning becomes the basis of policy formulation. Okay. So we see that this is how we can make out what is moral intuition and moral reasoning. If we understand that what they are, then it becomes easy to differentiate between them. And differentiate means moral intuition is spontaneous. Moral reasoning is not spontaneous. It is inferential reasoning. It is deductive. It is deducing. Moral intuition is a pre-reflective, while moral reasoning is reflective. You reflect on that. You explore various options. Moral intuition independently arises. Moral reasoning do not independently arises. It is based on certain reference point. Moral intuition is subjective, while moral reasoning is more of objective. Moral intuition is more of innate, but moral reasoning is acquired. Moral intuition might be initial stage and moral reasoning is later stage. Then moral intuition is rooted in conscience and moral reasoning is rooted into ethical approach, philosophical approach, values. It might be virtue ethics, it might be duty approach, it might be utilitarianism, it might be justice approach, it might be fairness, it might be common good. Okay. And the last difference we can say that if moral intuition is the basis of discretion, then moral reasoning becomes the basis of policy formulation. So that's what the difference is. As far as the relation is concerned, you can sense it out that both are not contradictory. Rather, both forms a initial stage and later stage of the entire ethical decision-making process. Moral intuition provides a platform on which moral reasoning capitalizes. All right? If you focus only on one, then you might have some skewed result. For example, if you say moral intuition without moral reasoning, then that could be biased, that could be subjective, at times that could be impulsive also. On the other hand, moral reasoning without moral intuition could be rigid, okay? It could be inflexible, or it might be devoid of empathy. Hence, both are two strong pillars of ethical decision-making process. And you can say that these are two fundamental parts of ethical intelligence. You might have question on ethical intelligence also as a term. And ethical intelligence is not just about ethical competencies. It is not just about values. It also includes emotional intelligence. And that becomes ethical intelligence. And that is like a firm step towards developing holistic competence. So these are the two parts of ethical intelligence. And now you can say that both are like two sides of a coin and like both are two sides of a ethical decision-making process. As far as the examples are concerned, one example we had already taken. Another example you can take of like Gandhiji, like values. His philosophy was based on the values of like truth, non-violence, because he intuitively believed that these values are intrinsically valuable. They have intrinsic worth. So these truth and non-violence are like based on moral intuition. But when he makes a sudden withdrawal of non-cooperation movement, then you will find that it was not on moral intuition, rather it was on moral reasoning. He explored various pros and cons. He had taken into account various factors, pros and cons of each option. And then he analyzed, then he understood that masses or public cannot sustain mass movement for longer time. They require some time to re-energize, rejuvenate. At the same time, he could sense that British authority would become very brutal, and they will be brutally suppressing this nascent mass movement. And hence, after deep moral reasoning, he took a decision. So initial stage and later stage. Then more example, you can talk about decriminalizing section 377. That is intuition, more moral intuitive. I mean, human beings have intrinsic value. They have moral worth. They have freedom. And then reasoning, what our constitutional values and constitutional morality talks about freedom and actualization of potentiality and this and that. Then we reach to certain conclusion of decriminalizing section 377. Then you can also talk about whistleblowing. It is not that you see whistleblower, you see something wrong and you start blowing whistle. You sense that there is something wrong. Then you explore various options. Then you explore, what different steps need to be done before blowing whistle. So there are certain steps which you need to exhaust in reaching to whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is a last resort. So moral intuition, and then finally you are moral reasoning, and then you reach to certain conclusion. So this is what we want to say, and we want to understand that this question, differentiating between moral intuition and moral reasoning, is not just a terminology and definition-based question. You can relate it with almost all the topics. And if you have understood this, and after this, once you start solving case studies, then you will understand the significance of these two terms. Almost in all case studies, you will be and you should be using these two terms. It is because of this I say that case studies are not to be treated in isolation. They are integrated part. One cannot be done without the other. Both will enrich each other. Okay. So this was the first. This was the PYQ. We have discussed under the heading of first theme, fundamentals, and the core part. In the next class, I would be picking another theme, and then again I'll pick up a good PYQ that will make me to discuss that in a very comprehensive way. Okay, thank you.